Coming up on this episode of the NHL at the Rink podcast, Sean and I wrap up the Stanley Cup final. The Panthers are champs again. We go through how they did it. The Oilers runner-ups again. We go through what happened and what's to come for them. All of that and more coming up on this episode of the NHL at the Rink podcast.
NHL at the Rink is presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
Welcome into another episode of the NHL at the Rink podcast. As always, it's brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip. Sean, this is the first time we're chatting for this podcast since the Florida Panthers have been celebrating another Stanley Cup championship, and I think I like to have a lot of fun, Sean. You like to have a lot of fun. Nobody has as much fun as the Florida Panthers.
Dude, I don't know how they do it. We got home.
I don't either.
And I've been asleep. Every time I sit down to watch TV or do something else, I fall asleep. My kids are laughing at me. It's ridiculous. Yesterday was the first day that I didn't take a nap since we got back.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's amazing. And these guys just went through this incredible grind that the Stanley Cup playoffs are. After the incredible grind of an 82-game regular season, you're beat up, you're banged up, you don't have adductors muscles on your bone if you're Matthew Tkachuk. And they've just been going nonstop pretty much since winning Tuesday night. It is a remarkable thing that they're doing. It's almost listen, the partying that they've done in the past 5-6 days is almost as remarkable as the feat of winning back-to-back championships, if you ask me.
Slow your roll a little, Dan. I don't know about that. You think about when the Capitals won and the parties that they had, and then Vegas obviously winning in Vegas and the parties there. But to win 2 in a row is such a rarity. I think we're dismissing it too easily for whatever reason. But it is amazing what adrenaline will do for you, right? You're completely run down, you're completely exhausted, and then all of a sudden, you're free. And you have all this excitement and adrenaline, and off you go. And look, there's some players in that locker room that know how to party, that know how to have a good time, that had a good time throughout the final when everything was coming at them. I think one of the things that makes the Florida Panthers so successful is that there's no moment that's too big for them. They just have people that process hard things really easily. And you could talk about all the skill you want, but to me, the Edmonton Oilers and any of the other teams they played in the last 2 rounds were just as skilled, right? I think when you get down to the cream of the crop in any sport, it becomes mental as much as anything. And I haven't seen a team as mentally strong as these Florida Panthers.
I 100% agree with you. Everything that they've been able to go through and accomplish, and it's 3 years worth of it, because I know they didn't win the Stanley Cup in 2023, but they were as beat up a team as you could possibly come across. They learned from it. They grew from it. They win it last year. They learned from that too. They grew from that. They win it again this year. And you think about it, Sean, remember the conversations we were having through 4 games of this Stanley Cup final about how epic it was, how close it was, one play, the difference, all that stuff, right? 3 overtime games, 1 double overtime game. Yes, there was the blowout 6-1 win in game 3, but it was just, that seemed like the outlier. And then they finished the series, and the Panthers dominate game 5. They dominate game 6. And you look at the final tally, it doesn't go 7, it goes 6. They win 3 games by 3 or more goals. And they had the lead in the series for almost 256 minutes while trailing for less than 34 minutes. With due respect to the Edmonton Oilers, who are a very good team and were a worthy opponent in this Stanley Cup final, you don't get to overtime 3 times, win 2 of those without doing it, right? Without being a worthy opponent. Sean, to me, and I'm curious your opinion on this, to me, this series was not nearly as close as as it looked, as it was let out to be. Now, the players and the coaches, they'll disagree with that probably, but the hard data shows you that the Panthers were just a dominant team in this series for the majority of the series.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, now you look at it in hindsight and you're like, they made us make extra trips because it could have been over in 4. Florida never blows a lead, and they blew 2. You know, they blew that lead in game 1 and forced overtime. And then, you know, the 3-0 game where you thought that they had kind of fumbled it away. And you know, there was an argument to be made that they could win every game in the series. So, you know, look, they're a dominant team. You know, we talked about this. It's their lower lines, right, that kind of allow them that luxury. Look, their third line just dominated this series. You know, look, the top line gets on the board in the final game. Reinhart with 4 goals, you know, in the clinching game, which is an unbelievable accomplishment. I don't even care that 2 of them were into an empty net. He put them in a position where they had to empty their net. But it was the third line that ate them up. Their fourth line with some quality minutes. And you know, I was in the Edmonton room after it was all over, right? Very somber. And you know, the one thing that really struck me is Connor McDavid was talking about it. And, you know, he was like, look, they're a really good team, back-to-back cup finalists, blah, blah, blah. And then he was like, we just banged our head against the wall. We kept doing the same thing over and over and over. And I look, there's a lot of ways you could take that. And some of it's just frustration. But I would argue that there's 11 other teams in the last 3 years that played the Florida Panthers in the playoffs who said they made us do the same thing over and over, and we just kept banging our heads. We didn't have any answers. Because how do you answer when a team goes 10 deep at forwards? How do you answer that in a cap world?
I'd argue they even go 12, 13 maybe, right? Boquist wasn't playing. He's a pretty good player. He could play for them. It is remarkable. You can't answer that. And that's what they make you do. They don't change their game. So to McDavid's point, we're banging our heads against the wall because they're just doing the same thing over and over again. The Panthers are doing the same thing over and over again. They're not changing. They just make you go nuts. They make you insane because they take away your hope. They take away your game, and that takes away your hope. And you can't, when you get to the playoffs and when you get to the Stanley Cup final, especially, change who you are. You can't change your game. You can adapt. You can change your lines. You can alter your D pairs, but you can't change your DNA and who you are. And that's the Panthers' advantage. They don't do it, and they force the other teams to question, should we? And when they don't do it, which is they shouldn't, the opponents, they're banging their heads against a wall because that's what the Panthers make you do. And think about it this way too, like the Oilers were chasing all series, Sean. I mean, I'm proud of the lead, right? 2 goals allowed in every first period. You're never going to win a series when you're giving up 2 goals in the first period in every game. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. You have to be better than that. You have to find a way to be even, or at least limit it to 1. Give yourself a chance. Now, they were able to come back from 3-0 down, and credit to them for that. They were able to come back in multiple games. But you're just not going to, it's just not, it can't be a thing you continue to try to do, because what happens? You start banging your head against the wall, and that's where the Panthers just get you. So listen, 3 Stanley Cup finals in a row, 2 Stanley Cup championships in a row. Is that enough for a dynasty?
Well, it depends who you talk to and what your definition of a dynasty is. I think here and now in a cap world that it certainly is, and we're forgetting the President's Trophy winning team. So
Yeah,
you know, you could argue 4 years of dominance because it's not easy to win a President's Trophy, and unfortunately, there's bad things that usually await the President's Trophy winner in the playoffs. I certainly think they are. I think they can do it again, and I think that, and you don't know what their roster looks like, right? Can they bring everybody back? Bill Zito, their GM, says he could. He said it in the glow of victory on the ice. I think the numbers in the light of day are a little different. I think he can bring most of his pieces back. But I don't even know that they need to, right? I think the brilliance of the Panthers and what they do since Paul Maurice took back over and was rejuvenated a little bit, because let's not forget, Paul Maurice walked away from hockey. He was like, I'm done. I can't get to the players anymore, and suddenly he's got to him, and to me, it strikes me that what the Panthers do and what they're able to do with the way they're constructed is they take away your strength. You say they don't change, but I would argue that they basically look at how the other team's going to beat them, and then they take it away. And then they say, beat us. Because we got the other pieces. We can beat you multiple ways. We'll beat you with Brad Marchand. We'll beat you with Sam Bennett. We'll beat you with Nate Schmidt, the scoring machine. We'll beat you with Bob. We have multiple ways we can beat you. If you can only beat me one way, I'm going to take it away. And then what are you going to do? And to me, that's what Connor was saying, right? Like, he was like, man, we tried. We tried all kinds of different matchups. When we were at home, we did all kinds of different things. We super loaded the line. We went thermonuclear. We broke the line up, put different people on that line. Connor Brown played on that line. Corey Perry played on that line. Like, there were players coming in and out to play on that top line. Chris Knobloch tried things, but the banging your head against the wall was, it didn't matter what they tried. There was Barkov. There was Forsling. There was Ekblad. And then there was Bob. Like, it was like the Maginot Line for you history buffs out there. So to me, that's where it comes in, is they identify what can beat them and they take it away.
It's a great point. That's exactly, and that's what a champion does. That's exactly what a champion does, is they take away your strength. And that's how you become a champion. They don't allow your strength to go head to head against our strength. Our strength takes away your strength. And then we've got the depth to beat you on the other way. And that's where their third line came in. Lindell, Listerine, and Marchand were absolutely fantastic in this series. And their fourth line was really good too. Gadjevich, Greer, Nosek. There's a reason why Paul Maurice put them out on the line, to end game 6. It goes back to when he changed it up after game 2 in the Toronto series in the second round, put that fourth line together, and the Panthers took off from there because that fourth line was able to give them quality 8 to 10 minutes a night. And they knew that they could put them out there and in the right situations, and they would control play. They would forecheck. They'd be heavy and hard, and they would make teams pay. And the third line they could put out there in any situation, because to me, that's a first line. A lot of teams, how many teams would take that as their first or second line, Sean? I mean, Lindell, Listerine, and Marchand, that's a first or second line. And on this team, it's a third line. That's their depth. And so, yeah, Reinhart had the 4 goals in game 6. That was unbelievable. Barkov was terrific in the series. But and Bennett obviously wins the Conn Smythe, and Tkachuk has 23 points despite playing hurt. Their first 2 lines were terrific, but they didn't absolutely have to score. They didn't have to. It could be their third line in games. They could rely on the fourth line to forecheck and generate offensive zone time. Their depth is so good. But here's the thing too, and it goes to the future now of the Panthers. I agree. I think they can do it again. It's a lot of hockey, okay? It's a lot, but I thought it would be a lot this year, and they still managed to go wipe the floor with the Oilers at the end of a series that looked like it would be a long one. It was 6 games, but they dominated games 5 and 6. I think they can do it again, Sean, and I don't think, and I agree with you, I don't think they need everybody back. Would it be great to have Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, and Brad Marchand back? Of course. I think some of them will come back. I don't think the financials will allow all of them to come back. I think it's just going to be too hard. But Mackie Samoskevich had 31 points in 72 games for the Panthers this year. He had 15 goals this season. He didn't play in the playoffs. He was in healthy scratch every game. He was a black ace, essentially, Maybe it's his turn next year to take over and be a third line guy for this team in the playoffs and be a be generating offense and do things like that. They can they if they lose one, they bring in another. They are a very good. It's the organization and it's the organizational depth that they have that will allow them to continue this. Next year. Do they win again next year? I don't know. I think they can. But look at what happened on defense after last season. They lost Montour. They lost Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Well, they were still able to recover. They pick up Seth Jones. They get Nate Schmidt, right? And all of a sudden, here, you're fine again, right? So I think that they're going to be able to just do it, be contenders again, and potentially go for the three-peat, even if they don't bring all three of those guys back.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And you look at Luosterainen, right? And there were only two guys that had more even strength points than him. And that was McDavid and Draisaitl. Like, and he's such a quiet part of that team. Part of it's being a quiet Finn, right? And part of it's the personalities that he's surrounded by and everything else. Like, there's so many unsung players on that team that you're right would be elevated and have elevated roles in other teams and in other systems. And part of the reason it works is what you went back to, and it's so under the radar, but not for the players, is him putting his fourth line out. So they're the guys who throw the gloves in the air and get to hug Bob first and everything else. Like, they were so important, and nobody understood their importance except for the guys in those rooms. And, Greer and Gadjevich and Nosek, who had that horrible penalty and the loss in the over the glass in game
one.
Game one. All 23 guys noticed that in the room. I'm going to go deeper. All 28 guys noticed that in the room. The guys that didn't even dress, you mentioned Sam Skevich, all those guys, they're sitting there and they're watching that. And they're so in tune to what's going on that they know what happened and they know why it happened. And that's important. Like, as Paul tries to sell his message, as Paul Maurice tries to sell his message every year, you need those reinforcements, and that's how you do it, right? You empower your players and you reward them for what they've done, and you let them know that you've seen the little things, the shot blocks, the forechecks, all of those things. It's not the goals. It's not the goals that make the Panthers go, and they scored more goals than anybody in recent memory in this playoff series. It's the other stuff that make them go, right? Edmonton can score goals until the cows come home, but until they learn to do the other things better. They did them better this year than they did last year, but they still didn't do them at a Panther level.
So I want to get to the Oilers because there's a lot of questions there, but we have reached the point where we need in the podcast where we need to talk about Matthew Tkachuk. At least I have, because I am continued to be, I'm just amazed by him. Sean, the injury that he has, that he says he has, the adductor muscle, possibly torn completely off the bone, that's surgery. That's 6 months of recovery time. Add on to that a sports hernia injury, potentially, right? This is what he talked about. He had 23 points in the playoffs. He didn't know he was going to be able to play in the playoffs. Guy had 23 points in the playoffs. He was an emotional leader in the playoffs. He was an on-ice leader in the playoffs. He was an on-ice contributor in the playoffs. And he did it with an injury that would sideline most people to the point where they would need to go under the knife, probably immediately, to begin recovery. Sean, I am amazed by this and not surprised, because this is what Matthew Tkachuk does, right? This is the player he is. But I'm amazed by it. And I think he said he was 50-50 on if he's going to need surgery. I mean, if you have a torn adductor muscle off the bone, that's surgery, okay? If it's not off the bone and it can recover and you can do different exercises to make it recover and rest and recovery, that's fine. But if it's surgery, I mean, he may not return until the Olympics next season. And here I'll give you this one too, Sean. The Panthers can be fine without him for the first couple of months of the season. US can't be fine in the Olympics without him. I think they need him. But if he's able to come back at that point, well, you're going to get a healthy, refreshed, rested, ready to go and healed up Matthew Tkachuk for the stretch run and into the playoffs. Hello, that's pretty good too, right? But it's just the here and now of it. I don't know how you feel, but 23 points in the playoffs playing with these injuries after not playing since February, it's absolutely remarkable.
It is remarkable, and he gets very little credit for the player he is. He gets credit for his brashness. He gets credit for his rattiness. But he never gets credit for the player that he is, right? And I think he showed it again. He does everything for that team. And I would argue that they wouldn't have won either of these cups without him. Because when I talked about the leadership before and about how nothing ever phases them and how whatever challenge is put in front of them, they just answer it. A lot of that comes from Matthew Tkachuk because he just doesn't get phased. The moment never phases him. Like, it's not that he's not aware, right? Because some guys are just unaware. They just go through life and they're like, whatever. Yeah, we're going to play hockey tonight. Like, it's not that he's unaware. It's that he embraces it, right? He understands the pressure and he understands the moment that he's been blessed to be put in. And then he says, why would I let it affect me? Like, I've been given this opportunity. Shouldn't I make the most out of it? And then he goes out and does it. And to me, those are the special players, right? And he has the points to back it up. Like, everybody talks about his mouth, right? And somebody told me, and I forget who it was during the playoffs, like, he's such a hard player to go against because he runs his mouth all the time and he makes you crazy. And then he goes and he scores, right? There's 9 million guys in this league that run their mouths and they never back it up. And you could just laugh at him, right? Haha, that's funny. Look what I just did. Matthew does it. And then when he's done, he says, now look what I did. Not only did I run my mouth at you all game, but I just scored the winning goal. And now I'm going to run my mouth some more on the way off the ice. He makes people literally crazy.
Yeah. He is a pain. He's a pain, and he's so good. Hands of gold, by the way. His hands are so good. Paul Maurice talks about it all the time. How good his hands are, how just his ability to thread passes, find guys, control a puck. Those are the underrated things from Matthew Tkachuk's, game that, really do need to be talked about more. I agree with you 100%. I mean, we don't talk enough about him for the skill that he has and the player that he is. It's what he does, with everything he does other than when he has the puck on his stick, and I think when he has the puck on his stick, he's elite too. So it's amazing what he was able to do. All right, so now let's switch it quickly here to the Oilers. 2 questions that are going to have to be addressed in their offseason. The obvious is Connor McDavid. The contract situation, what happens? He's eligible to sign the contract extension July 1st. He says he's going to weigh all the options, talk to all the right people. He's not in any rush. Obviously, the Oilers want to get this done July 1. You're right. They don't want this to wait. They don't want this to hang in the balance. We'll see where that goes. But the other question, and the more pressing and immediate question for where they are for next season, Sean, is in net. You can't think you're going to win the Stanley Cup when you have to pull your goalie 3 times. And you have to change your goalies in the Stanley Cup. Look at the Panthers. Sergei Bobrovsky. Right? I mean, it was the worst contract in the league, and now it might be the best contract in the league. But the steadiness there, they're going to have to figure that out. Is Stuart Skinner the right guy? Can he handle it? for what they want to accomplish. He can handle being a good goalie on a good team. Can he handle being a good goalie that wins a Stanley Cup with his team? Because that is it. That is what there is no other thing for this team than to get back here again and win. They have to answer that question. I'm not paid to answer that question. You're not paid to answer that question. But the question that comes with it, if they're wavering, Sean, if they're questioning that, if they don't know, and they're thinking about a change, who's out there? Who's better? Who are they going to get? It's a huge offseason question, in my opinion, for the Oilers. Not as big as McDavid, because McDavid's the biggest thing in the league, obviously. But for their most pressing need of getting back there next season, McDavid's there next season. Whether he signs a contract extension in July, August, September, or whatever, he's signed for next season. The question is in net. It's a big question for them.
It's huge, and I think they're linked, right? I think one of the answers that Connor wants is, how are we going forward? How are we going to make this better? How are we going to become closer to being a champion? The one argument that I would make, and you kind of alluded to it, right, is, well, there's two. Who's better than Skinner that they can get without some sort of franchise-altering trade where big pieces are moving out for big pieces to come in, right? Like I've heard people say, oh, well, maybe the Bruins would be amenable to moving Swayman after last year. Does that make them better? I don't know, right? So my point being, there's probably only 4 or 5 goalies in the league that you would get, and you'd be like, okay, now we're legit. We have a better goalie than everybody we're going to play in the league. The second part is, you brought up Bob, right? And I talked to Skinner after the game, and the one thing that Stuart Skinner has that might be the most important tool in his arsenal is he is unbelievably honest about his game, about who he is, and about what he wants to become. And I asked him, I said, look, obviously this is really disappointing, but when you look across the ice and you see Sergei Bobrovsky, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, who's been run out of town twice, who signed a contract that was called an albatross, and you see him being hugged by his teammates and being celebrated as a great goalie, do you learn from that? And he was like, yeah. He's like, I would love to talk to Bob and find out how he made that journey, because that's the journey that I need to go on, and that's the journey that I'm going to go on. And that's where I see myself in the future. This kid's only been in the league 3 years. And he's been to the Cup final, 2 of them, and the Western Conference final, the 3rd time, if I'm not mistaken, maybe second round. Is there another goalie in the league that has that resume?
I mean, there are a few, but not many. To your point, yeah. I mean, there are a few that have that resume, but not maybe not that young. No, not in their short tenure in the league.
Finals.
Matt Murray had that, I guess, but yeah, I get your point. I understand your point, and you're right. And it's the journey he has to go on. The argument I'll give about Bobrovsky, before he was run out of town, or they were attempting to run him out of town, the contract was worse. He was a 2-time Vezina Trophy winner at that point, so he had earned that contract, but then he had to deal with it. And yeah, you're right about Skinner. Honest to, not to a fault, honest to be who he is, the person that he is. And it's I think it's a terrific quality, and that's a great answer he gives you. The question is does he do it with the Oilers, right? I mean, he's certainly not done in this league. He's got a long way to go. He's going to have a long career ahead of him, but does what he want to happen with the Edmonton Oilers, his team that he grew up in Edmonton? That question has to be answered, and an answer may be coming this offseason for Stuart Skinner, because I don't know where they go from here, but and I agree with you. They're linked, McDavid and Skinner, because that's a big part of it. Goaltending, we know, is a big part of it. Trust in that position, and they'll talk trust all they want, and we love our goalies, Skinner and Pickard and whatnot. Listen, man, it's 2 years in a row you were beaten by a better team and a better goalie, and if you want to get there, you got to get better at that position. Maybe you have the guy, maybe you don't. It's going to be it is a really hard question to answer in the offseason, to be, because you just don't know. The position is so fickle. You just don't know. But that is the big thing for the Edmonton Oilers that they are going to have to answer. Plus, obviously, the McDavid thing. So listen, Sean. Yeah.
Let me ask you one quick thing, Dan. The fix, if it's not Stuart Skinner, does he make $2.6 million?
No.
So now the whole team changes.
Yep.
The beauty of the Edmonton Oilers is their goaltender's under contract for $2.6 million. That gives you $95 million to spend on everyone else, including your captain, who you need to re-sign.
Yeah, you're right. That's the hard part of the question, man. That's it. That's what makes it so hard, because you've come so close 2 years in a row, and goaltending has not helped you. You've been beaten by goaltending. It's a problem that they have to deal with, but is it a big enough problem that you want to change everything? Do you believe in him, and do you believe in what he can accomplish? But they did not in this Stanley Cup final. They pulled him a lot. So lots of questions there for the big question there for the Edmonton Oilers. Obviously, big questions here for the Florida Panthers as well, with Ekblad, Bennett, and Marchand as UFAs to be, or will they get there? I think they'll be able to get two of the three back. I don't know which two of the three that is, but that's my prediction on that, Sean. And listen, hey, it's Monday, June 23rd. We're both going to Los Angeles tomorrow for the NHL draft. And we're going to be doing this again just a little bit later on this week for our draft special. We're probably going to have Mike Morial from the NHL draft class, our draft guru at NHL.com, along with Adam Kimmelman, on for our next episode a little bit later on this week as we look ahead to the draft and free agency. We've already got some moves out there. Jonathan Toews coming back. But this was the wrap-up of the Stanley Cup final. So that's what we focused on here, Sean. But Sean, we got a lot of stuff that we're going to have to tackle here in the next week.
Can't wait. I'm rested. I'm recovered. I'm ready to go.
There you go. No more naps. Not until July 2nd, okay?
Gotcha.
All right. This was fun. Thanks for listening. As always, the podcast brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip. Enjoy the draft.